What is up, everyone? Welcome back to my channel, or to my channel if this is your first time. My name is Stephanie and this is Orion's About Minis, and today we are going to be painting one of the absolute glorious models from Parabellum Wargames. Parabellum did send me this Thunder Chieftain early so that I could make this video, and for that I am so grateful. So thank you so much to Parabellum Wargames for sending this my way. You may already know that I am very proudly sponsored by Parabellum, and I do have a discount code for you to use here. So when you use this code, you get a discount and I get a small commission of your purchase, and that kind of thing goes a really long way in supporting me and my channel and my work, so it's very much appreciated. In this video, I'm going to be covering several aspects of my process on painting this beautiful model, and those include the skin, the eyes, the leather, a quick piece on the non-metallic metal that I did, as well as the bone. So I will timestamp everything below, and I hope that you enjoy seeing this process. Let's get into it. So I primed this thing black before going in with an airbrush to do the underpainting. So what I'm doing here with the underpainting is I am using these three colors to build up a gradient. So the deepest shadows will be purple, and then it will go up into red as we get to the more focal points of the model. If you're confused about underpainting and what the heck it is, essentially all I'm doing is placing these colors onto the model before actually layering on colors with my brush. It's a completely optional step, but for me personally, I just like the look of colored shadows as opposed to just black shadows or shadows that are just darker versions of whatever the base coat color is. And here you'll see me just add a little bit of blue because I wasn't quite getting the depth to the purple that I wanted. So just adding a bit of blue really took it where I needed it to go for the underside of this. Again, this is not going to be the color of the finished model. This is not me base coating the model with my airbrush or anything like that. It is just me placing the colored shadows the way that I want them. I'm gonna kind of explain this a little bit more as I carry on with painting the model, and I hope if you're still confused it makes sense, because I get a lot of questions about why the heck I do this. But yeah, I like the way that it looks, and I really like the atmospheric effect that it gives it. You can see here I added a little bit of scarlet and mixed that into the red shade that I had going on already in my airbrush, and I am just placing that on the very top. And yeah, this is what it ended up looking like after this step. So I did not glue the rider on, obviously, to make it easier to paint, but I did put him on there just as I was doing the underpainting so that the colors line up and the whole thing makes sense as one cohesive piece. I went ahead and dry brushed the base with these two shades of brown, the darker one first, and then the lighter shade on top of that with a lighter hand. And whenever I need to dry brush a part of the model, I try to do that first because it can be a little messy. Just get it over with and then we can clean up after. So that is all you're seeing here. Most of this, like I said, will be covered with grass, so I'm not too concerned about the way that this looks. This is where I got really deep into painting this model bright blue, and I thought this was the most creative scheme ever. And then I realized, oh, okay, I've done this exact scheme before in the past on my Apex Predator. So I need to pivot my entire plan and my entire color scheme to be different, because obviously I want these models to be different. So I salvaged it by pivoting to purple, which is my go-to color. This is the color Faded Ultramarine. I absolutely love this paint, and I am just going to be applying this over top all of that blue that I had placed on. I'm trying to do so in a very careful way because I don't want it to look overly chalky, but these models do have a great amount of texture, so they take really well to dry brushing and washes and things like that. So for that, I was grateful. It did save me a lot of time in these stages of correction. And then after this, I go in with a purple wash, which I highly recommend. It's like Nuln Oil but purple. It's fantastic. And I just place that over top. Like I said, because they're so textured, these models just drink the wash up. You do still want to be careful not to let it pool in places, because when it dries, it'll look really janky. But yeah, So personally, I love the look of a light underbelly for any dinosaur creature. So I painted the underside of it, any fleshy like peach tone you've got, and then hit it with Rakeland Flesh Shade, which is my favorite of the flesh shades. It just brings it some depth. And I understand that looking at this, we are in the absolute heart of the ugly phase, but hang tight because we are going to make a turnaround here in just a little bit, I promise. But yeah, I am just getting these washes placed, and God, I'm looking at this thing. It looks pretty hideous. That was the color Faded Plum, and I am just lightly dragging this over some select areas. Again, I don't want to go too heavy with this, but it just needed a little pop. Yeah, this is where we're at. I am taking Mephiston Red. I realized I used the airbrush version. It didn't end up mattering, so yeah, it just went on really smoothly. I'm going to do a red streak starting on its tail, working up to the end and then coming around the other way. You'll see where I put the color. I'm not really worried about it being tidy just yet. Like I said, we will be refining everything a lot later, but I think that the stripies like this just really make them pop, and I like the look of it. So yeah, you'll kind of see what I do here. So I had this vision of a very bright orangey red crest. So that is where we are going. The underpainting for this section is that light sort of magenta-y color. So it actually boosts the look of the bright crest, which is perfect for what I'm going for. I'm just going to take this watered down airbrush paint and place it. This is the color, I think you pronounce it Scrofulous Brown, and I am mixing it into that Mephiston Red. And if there's one thing you take away from this video, let it be that that shade of brown is so amazing and so versatile. I use it for everything because it is incredibly saturated. If you're working with reds and you're trying to get up to oranges and yellow, it like is the perfect bridge to get there, to blend into your red, to get to orange and yellow, and you can just see it work its magic here. It's so incredibly vibrant. It's one of my favorite paints. So I'm just taking it little by little and adding more and more of it into the red. And as I get to these higher layers, I am taking more time to carefully pick out the scales. I'm not going to do every single one on the entire crest, but just doing a select few on the areas that catch the most light go a long way. So at this stage, this is actually pure Scrofulous Brown. I'm positive I'm saying that wrong, but I am just going along the edge of each scale on this part, and it really pops. That's the color Azure, and like I said before, I am just going to be defining some areas. This is incredibly out of focus, but you can get a really good view of the skin cells on my thumb in this shot, so that's fantastic. Yeah, so just pulling these little scales up apart from the rest, making them pop a little bit. Obviously, people look at the eyes of a model when they pick it up, so I am giving this area a little extra love. We want it to look clean, we want it to look good. Using beige red, I'm going to quickly highlight some of the light underbelly of this thing. And, oh, Titus, please stop scratching yourself, buddy. Thank you. Sorry, it's my dog. What was I saying? Oh, yeah. Okay, so I'm just highlighting this. You'll notice that the undertones, like the underpainting, this is the darkest purple that we did when we underpainted. So even though we are highlighting it with a shade that is brighter than the rest of the model, the shadows are still deeper than the areas on the top. So yeah, just keep that in mind. I am going to be defining where one area changes into the next to boost the contrast. And now we're going in on the eyes. So this is golden yellow. This is very, very, very bright. And I wanted the eyes to pop, so that is why I chose such a bright color. But I am going to be going in with the Cassandra yellow shade, and I'm going to let that pool around the edges just to give it some depth, because you don't want it to look chalky. You want it to look like it is a round surface that has depth to it. So it does take a few layers of that wash before it looked okay and looked like it had depth. And then I'm just going in with black, and I'm awful at filming eyes. I don't know, it's just really hard to focus on making sure that the camera's in focus and that I'm not ruining everything. So this isn't really the best depiction of like what I did. I'm going in with white, and I'm gonna put a glare, and I want the glare to be 50% on the yellow part and 50% on the pupil to make it look like it's just cutting it and looks good. We're gonna go ahead and define the eyelid because we really want that section to, you know, you want it to show that you put a little extra effort in. So we're gonna go ahead and define the eyelid, and then I did take a purple wash and put that into the area just below the eyelid to make the highlight I did on the eyelid pop even further. So yeah, it's all about that contrast, and it's kind of hard to do this in such a small area, but just take your time, redo it if you have to, and it'll turn out okay. All right, so these are the colors I use for bone, and I tried to do minimal editing on this part and just show you what I did, but speed it up so we're not sitting here for 100 years. This is the first color, the darkest one, and I am just layering it on. You'll notice that I am letting the underpainting shine through, which is a common theme here. We want all of those beautiful purple and red tone shadows to shine through. So you do not want to cover, if you're painting in this style, you do not want to cover the entire bone with your base coat color. You just want to let some of that shadow show. So I'm just layering it on. I'm going to slowly be adding the lighter shade to the darker shade, adding the layers, covering less and less surface area, and you'll just kind of see what I'm doing with this. If at any point you feel like the transition from one layer to the next is too drastic, you can fill your brush up with water and kind of put some of that thin down paint in between to make it more smooth. I definitely did that a couple times before taking a smaller brush and putting pure white on it and just making a few little marks. I love texture in my painting, and so I try to include it wherever I can, and bone is always a good place to do so. And these are the three colors that I will be using for the very warm toned worn leather on this model. That is a tongue twister. I'm very impressed with myself for getting that out. I've been using a lot of Pro Acryl recently, as you can tell, and they are fantastic. So the first thing that I'm doing is taking that mahogany color, which is the darkest one. I watered it down about 50-50 with water, and I am placing it on the area that we are going to be layering next. And of course, I am leaving the shadows there, shadowy colors, so whether that be purple or red or whatever it is, I am leaving them alone and will continue to do so for the following layers. So like I said, we are going for a textured worn leather look, so we will be doing some stippling. Try to pick a brush you don't really care about. This brush is already on its way out anyway, so I thought it would be a great choice. So I'm just blending one color into the next along that gradient and kind of blotting. I don't know if this is really stippling because I'm not using one point. I'm kind of using all of the brush fibers to do it. I don't really know how to explain it, but yeah, I'm just kind of blotting it on and then like blending into the next color and the next color, doing less and less surface area. As with the bone, if you find that there are any areas that are too drastic in transition, just water your paint down a bit and smooth over them before moving on to the next step. I am going to be applying the final highlight, which is that ivory color, with a smaller brush, and just being very intentional about this. You don't want to overdo it because it will take away from all of the work you did on the layering. So just do it on the very, very tippy tips and the very, very edgy edges, and it will really make it pop. So this is my recipe for gold non-metallic metal. This is my go-to for gold. I use this one pretty much all the time. And this model, these specific little trinkety things on this model, are perfect if you are a beginner trying non-metallic metal for the first time or just getting used to it, because of the irregular shape of them. They're very scuffed up and don't look like they would be very shiny. So you can worry just about getting the color gradient correctly rather than worrying about the colors as well as the exact shadow and light placement, if that makes sense. So if this is your first time with these, all I did was do less and less surface area the exact same way that I would have done like the leather or whatever else. Just layer it on, moving from one color to the next until you get to that lightest color, and then you do an edge highlight. If they were differently shaped, if they were shinier, if they were less scuffed up, that would complicate it a little bit more. But because of the way that they are and the way that they look, I really recommend this. If you don't like your non-metallic metal, worst case scenario, you go over it with true metallic paint and call it a day. But I recommend at least giving it a shot, and I hope that that makes sense. So I went ahead and called this piece done. There are definitely some areas I could have pushed a little bit further, but I decided I was ready to move on to our Thunder Chieftain that you see here. So his blue skin is composed of 3 colors, which are ultramarine, turquoise, and pink from the Pro Acryl line. And when I'm painting something like skin that requires a lot of glazing and layering, just make sure that I place those colors on my palette so that they are easy to be blended into one another and I don't have to keep going back and, you know, squirting out more paint. It's just all there on the palette. And I am layering this on using a combination of layering and glazing, and then layering again, and then glazing again. I do have a full blue skin tutorial in length coming out on my Patreon in a couple of weeks that I'm currently working on right now, so I won't get into it too much here for the sake of redundancy. But you can just kind of see what I'm doing. And then all of the other stuff on the actual chieftain is painted exactly the same way as what was on the mount. So like all the leathers, all the bone, everything is painted the same. So after this piece, we are pretty much going to be done. So here is the magical moment where I unite the two. I was so excited about this. Here he is. He's finished, looking very much like a Smurf, but I'm not mad about it. Try to put him on. It was actually a little bit harder than I thought it would be. So we're gonna do a take 2, and here he goes on the mount. I did obviously glue him on at this point, and yeah, I was pretty happy about it. The only thing I am angry about is the fact that you see me here putting on the grass, and I didn't realize until after that this shade of grass is 2 shades greener than the grass that I use on the rest of my Wadroon army, so that's incredibly frustrating, and I don't know why I didn't check them first. It's been a really long time since I painted any Wadroon, so yeah, that's gonna bother me for many years, but here it is. He is done. It was really hard to photograph this model actually because the mount looks better from the left side and the model as a whole looks better from the right side where you can see the rider. So I just took a whole bunch of pictures from different angles in hopes that it would all come together and you can get an idea of what it looks like in real life. As usual, thank you so much for watching. I hope this video was helpful or at least interesting, and I will see you in the next one.